Hello,
Hi.
everybody. I'm Bryson Boone Paul. I'm here, and we're going to talk about the YNW Melly trial. This is obviously going out to all the Twitterverse, everybody that's been following the trial since day one, everybody that has had questions, everybody that's had the curiosity of what's going on in Melly's mind, what's going on in his family's mind throughout this whole trial. So I figured I would just, do something for you guys and bring on an actual therapist, an actual psychologist who actually knows a lot about what's going on inside of both the family and the defendant right now, YNW Melly, who is on trial right now for a double murder in Florida. And it's been the talk of the town. It's been one of the highlights of pretty much everything going on in news for the past month. But we got the one and only Shelley Shaffer in the building. She's going to help us out. She's going to talk to us about the emotional side of this trial. So she has 30 years of experience dealing with incarcerated inmates, with their families. She started out with juveniles, and now she's worked her way up to all the way to adults. And this is perfect for this case, is because it's a lot of going on. It's a lot of revolve. She's dealt with people that have went through similar situations or had inmates who have dealt with similar situations with their families. So she's going to be able to talk to us. She also owns her own Shaffer Professionals Consulting and Therapy and Consulting. So she's going to be able to talk to us about all this and more. So we're going to get into it. Shelley, how are you doing today? Glad you can take the time out such short notice too.
Oh, thank you so much, Boom. It's truly an honor to be here. I've been following you. I've been following the case. I'm just really eager. I can't wait for closings. I really can't.
So we definitely got closing arguments tomorrow, obviously on Thursday tomorrow, whenever you watch this. So we got the closing arguments tomorrow, and then we'll head into the verdict. And who knows? Right now it's been 50-50 the whole way, honestly, between the performances of both the prosecution and the defense. So, but first things first, Shelley, let's go through your credentials so people will know exactly who you are and all the degrees and all the experience that you've been through. Like I said, you have 30 years of experience dealing with juveniles and just dealing with inmates in general in the justice system and dealing with families of those inmates. So
Right. Well, way back before dirt came around, that's when I went to college and grad school. So that's kind of how I'm dating myself. But I ended up with 2 masters. I've got one in criminal justice and the other in counseling psychology. I was going towards my PhD, PsyD, but I ended up as a single mom. I had to go to work. I couldn't keep going to school. So right out of college, I started working in Detroit, outside of Detroit. This was in between college and grad school. And then I got a rude awakening and to just the whole poverty, just the insane amount of poverty that I was working with there. And then I went back and went to grad school and came back, started working with adolescent sex offenders in a residential setting. So basically they had already gone through the entire judicial system. They had been adjudicated, because as a juvenile, you don't get convicted, you get adjudicated. I'm in Minnesota. You probably can hear by the accent, but we also have something called extended juvenile jurisdiction. So sometimes you might get a juvenile who was adjudicated and convicted. So they are going to go through the adult process if they do not make it as a juvenile. So that's kind of, what we're talking about is a lot of emotional stress, right? Mm-hmm. You kind of hit on it with, Melly's been going through all these stressors, and his family, his mom, his friends, not to mention Juvy and Sax family and friends, all of this is it's emotional trauma that they continue to relive 4 years after the fact. But now I'm getting off tangent, Shelley. So coming back, I retired from the Minnesota Department of Corrections in February of 20. That's what it was, because I couldn't have timed it any better, right before COVID hit. Mm-hmm. And I opened up my own practice in 19 and was doing it kind of part-time both. And then boom, COVID, and it just blew up. So I ended up hiring a couple of friends of mine. So now they work with me, and I love it. I actually love it. I've never worked with a female before, so that was a first for me. I've always worked with males, And for those that say, well, you have to be in those shoes to work with those shoes, well, I've never been a man, and 30 years later, I've really done some pretty good work with some men. But I don't know what else you want me to say, but I'm really excited to be here, Bill.
Thank you. Well, your experience is very relatable to this case, being that Melly, even though he's in his early 20s now, he surrendered himself to Broward County when he was 18 or when he was 19 years old. So he was still relatively a child. Even though he turned 18, he was still relatively a child, because a lot of us don't grow up until are mature until we're like 25, 24, 25. So, but although you originally started off with sex offenders and whatnot, have you ever dealt with or somebody of this or a defendant of this magnitude? I would say, like somebody that is on trial for a double murder, somebody is on trial just for murder in general.
Yes. Yeah, I actually ran, it's funny now because he's my husband, but he was a sergeant / lieutenant when I started running the group with him, but we ran the lifer group in our prison. So my favorite clients, actually, this is going to come out wrong, I know it, but my favorite clients were those that have committed homicide. And they were the most real, they were the most desiring of change. And it was just really fun. And I hate to say that because it feels like I'm dismissing the impact that their behaviors or their choices had on the victims' families or their community. When you first were asking the question, I wasn't sure if you were asking about somebody that's famous. No, I haven't ever had somebody that you can find on Spotify, for Christ's sake. So, but yes, I have worked with a lot of and juveniles as well who have been involved in homicides. So
now, first question I would ask you is, like, does his background as far as where he grew up, how he was, I guess they're trying to say gang affiliated, how everything in that nature, how does that go into the mentality of somebody that's fighting for their life in this case right now? Like, do they go back and think about all this stuff that they did? Do they really reflect on all this? Or is it like how they have, like, hey, it was part of the lifestyle, so I got to go with that? Or how would you explain this, what's going on with him and based on his upbringing?
Well, first off, you've got to look at the fact that his mom was 14 when she had him. So she was not emotionally or physically developed, maturity-wise. Her brain wasn't even complete until he was almost 10. So looking at the impact that having such a young mother raising you while she's still raising herself is going to take a toll. Now, looking at the gang aspect, I've worked with people who are loud and proud about it, which means they're probably not in it, they're just wannabes, and those that just don't want to talk about it. I'm going to take you on a little trip. Humor me for a second. Mm-hmm. If everybody in your family hunts and fishes, you're more likely to hunt and fish, right? So if somebody says, okay, we're going to go hunting this weekend, you coming? And you say, no, I'm going to stay home and knit. That's not going to go over well. And for a lot of these families who've got intergenerational illegal activity, whether it be gang connected or not, they have to put food on the table, and they find a way to do that. I'm not going to judge anybody for what they choose to do. I have the same empathy for people missing out on the income, whether it was by a 9-to-5 job or it was hustling on the corner. They're still putting food on the table and taking care of their family. And when they get arrested and taken out, they're no longer anybody to put the food on the table. So you've got that stressor. But as far as gang connected, I think that's their family. Through 30 years of working with people who are connected and who are not, it really is a family. And is it an occupational hazard to become arrested or to get arrested? For some, yes. Like, say you're slinging on the corner. Yeah, you're getting a weed charge. Well, maybe not anymore. It's legal here. But, you're selling something, you're doing something, and you're going to get picked up. Now, you get arrested and incarcerated while you're waiting for your day in court. You're not going to get as much flack for such a minor charge as you would for, say, a homicide charge. You come in on that. If there was a child involved in the homicide, you may not get the protection from the gang members that you had kind of counted on, because you went across you violated the code. Depending on which set you're in and what your lit is, but it is a sense of support. On the other hand, there are some positives to being connected, because oftentimes if you go in and you take the case for someone else and it benefits the gang, I hate using that term, I don't know what else to use, but they may take care of your family while you're in. So there is that to be said.
All right. And then an important question that I know everybody is wondering, what, based on your experience, what is going through Melly's mind throughout this whole trial period? Being that, it's been a lot of talk on social media about him laughing, about him being happy, a lot, or smiling, about him having many different emotions shown throughout the trial that people have found odd or awkward or whatnot. So in your experience, what is going on? What is going through his head during this trial?
Well, first off, I would challenge to each person that's saying and criticizing how he's acting, how would they be in his position? That's what I would say first. Second off, I was the profiler for our hostage negotiations team, so I do have a little bit of profiling background. A lot of what I'm seeing from him, just watching his body language and such, tends to be some immaturity and a lot of nerves. He may be laughing and trying to look cool as a cucumber, but he's an iceberg. He really is. There's just that you see on the top, and this has to be getting to him. Again, he's had 4 years of sitting in jail, but he's also facing he's got a death penalty case. How can you not be nervous? And without looking at whether his guilt or innocence, because that's not up for me to judge, I would be a mess. And trying to look composed while that's going on, that would be a major challenge. But he does seem to have a really interesting relationship with his female attorney. And I don't know how to say it any other way than there seems to be more to that story than just attorney-client.
All right, from your experience, why would you say that?
Their interactions seem awful flirtatious. I don't know. The giggling back and forth, it seems like school kids. It doesn't seem appropriate for a courtroom setting, but again, that could be my bias. We're pretty stoic in Minnesota. We stand up, sit down, and then we're done. Yes, sir, no, sir. So I don't know if I would have that going on with my attorney if I were sitting there facing a death penalty case. But again, this is him. I do see nerves every once in a while. You'll be seeing him and I'm over exaggerating now, but you'll see him so something's shaking underneath the table, whether that's his feet bouncing, it's his legs bouncing, something like that. He's got some nerves going on. I think his intent is to show that he's cool and that he's laid back and he's confident, but I think he's very nervous.
Okay, correct. Now, as somebody with your experience, how would you say, obviously Melly's been in jail for 4 years now, like what, through your experience, what is going through somebody who is awaiting trial and pretty much fighting for their life? What is it like, or what are they going through throughout the duration from the day one that they are incarcerated to at this point where they're on trial? Now they have to fight for their life. Now they have to wait for 12 people to determine his fate.
Right. Can you imagine? Oh, that would just all right, you finish closings and you got to go back to jail. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I don't know. But from my experience, a lot of the individuals that I worked with that were incarcerated spent a lot of time journaling, drawing, isolating. They weren't out playing ball in the yard. They weren't out, doing a whole lot of stuff. They may have been spending time on the phone with their loved ones, but there's so much uncertainty that it's hard to really get into a groove of sorts. One thing with being incarcerated is you don't get to make any decisions for yourself. They tell you when to wake up. They tell you when to eat. They tell you when to go out and play. And they tell you when you can shop. They tell you what you can buy. So they really don't have to make any decisions. So a lot of that is starting to sit down and think about, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? So he may be sitting back in his cell wondering, what if I get acquitted? Okay, then I'm going to go home. We're going to have a party. It's all going to be good, right? What if there's a hung jury? am I going to get out while they start to prepare for the next trial, or am I going to have to stay locked up? This is insane. This is 4 years. We're supposed to have speedy justice in this country. 4 years is a pretty long time. And just side note, some of this stuff could have been taken care of 4 years ago. Why are they so haphazard and scattered with their evidence? Just saying. But or he's thinking, well, what if I get life without prison? How am I going to take care of my family? How am I going to what's going to happen? You know, who do I have to be associated with? Who do I have to be hanging with? You know, do I have to owe somebody this? Do I have to get somebody for this? You know, you have to set up a network in prison just as much as you have to set up one outside of prison. Right. And then what if I get the death penalty? That we don't have that here in Minnesota, so I don't have any personal or professional experience with that. But that has got to be a heavy weight hanging over your head, even if you know that your defense is a slam dunk. There's still, you're dealing with humans, and humans are fallible. Humans make mistakes. Humans are not predictable. And so you try to predict what one person's going to do, let alone 12. Right. And yeah, there's always a chance.
Now, based on your experience, what is somebody in this situation going through? What is their journey like mentally throughout this? Like, obviously, from the first day that they go in to now.
Well, hopefully there's not this long of a time between arrest and court. But in a typical case, it's usually 1 year or so, around that length of time. But if you have not committed the crime that you are arrested for, it's a whole different emotional challenge than it is as if you did. Now, of course, you're not going to say, oh yeah, come arrest me because I did this, unless you send a text that says, I did that, shh, right? But we don't know if he meant that, because it wasn't that, right? But there's a lot of strain. There's the emotional strain of losing your freedom, you know, being ripped out of your family, not knowing who's going to take care of what. So there's a lot of worry initially, a lot of fear. You don't know what the prison life is like, what jail life is like. Most of us are not accustomed to going through the system. So you may not know like who to call, who's a lawyer. Do you rely on a public defender, or do you try? I mean, not everybody's got bottomless pockets to pay for an attorney. And looking at a trial that if you were to have called a lawyer right when you got arrested, as Melly did 4 years ago, imagine those legal fees. A cheap lawyer is going to run you about $200 an hour. And that's a cheap lawyer. So that's an awful lot of money that your family is now on the hook for, because you getting 17 cents an hour is not going to make it. So there's also just the challenges of being incarcerated. Some places are harder to do time than others. Florida is not an easy place to do time. You know, it's rough. If you're in with some groups, that may benefit you, but there's other groups that it may put you out as a target. And are you always going to be around those people that are going to have your back? Or are you going to be going to the library by yourself? And that may put you out as a target. So there's pros and cons to joining up, and to not. But you have to make those decisions having never navigated them before. And especially for Melly being 19. He's very street savvy and very smart guy. I mean, I'm not going to knock that. He's a very, very smart guy, but he's young. And you got to rely on somebody. Who do you trust? Can you trust your cellie? Can you trust the guy that says, hey, I got you, man? Or is that somebody that's really going to just pull the wool under your eyes? That's not the right phrase, but you know, you got to make sure that you are aligning yourself with the right people. So if you have to think about it, boom, if every interaction that you had on a daily basis, you have to wonder, are they going to use this against me? Or can I trust somebody? Well, trust isn't a word that you use when you're incarcerated. And being a therapist to those who are incarcerated, I definitely would never use the word trust. I use the word faith a lot. Have some faith in me. You know, don't trust me because you don't know what I'm going to do. And I have to prove myself to you. But have some faith in me. So if you go up to every person that you come into contact with and have to question, should I not? Can I say something? Can I not? Right? That's going to be exhausting. I mean, we run into people at the grocery store and we don't know what they're going to do, right? but we're not consciously always thinking about that. Like I said, hey, how you doing? Oh, now is he gonna follow me? Now am I on his radar? I mean, you don't know, but we don't have it amplified to that degree as when you're incarcerated, because every day is Groundhog Day. You wake up, the same thing happens. You go to bed, the same thing happens. You wake up, the same thing happens. So hearing that he's involved in fights and losing phone privileges, that's normal. It really is.
Correct. And then being that Melly has been in jail a few times since, like, obviously when he was 16, 17, and then going in now, turning himself in at 19 and having to sit down for 3 or 4 years already. But I want to ask you, being that obviously you've dealt with juveniles before, and that while Melly isn't necessarily a juvenile, obviously, because he turned himself in at 19, he's still, obviously, like I said, he hasn't matured as an adult. But I want to ask you, is there a different type of emotional journey that a juvenile goes through when being incarcerated? And what is that journey like?
There's definitely a difference when you're incarcerated as a juvenile. Even having experience at 16 and a couple of different bits that, might have been done between then and when he turned himself in. And he's got knowledge of friends who have been in and out. So he's not unfamiliar, but it's all coming, let's use a courtroom phrase, hearsay. He doesn't know what it's like because you have to live it to know it. And for him to go in as a juvenile, or for anybody else to go in as a juvenile, whether we want to admit it or not, and here's where the tough guy man pride comes into play, we still need our moms, we still need that person that we go to, whether it's our moms, our dads, our grandmas, our aunties, we still need that person. And now you can only make phone calls when they say that you can, or when there's a phone available, or when you've paid the guy that monitors the phone to let you use the phone. I mean, there's so many different nuances that are involved in jail and prison environments that people don't talk about. And to not know how to navigate that, he may have somebody in there that can help him, but he's still young. He's still thinking that he's invincible, because as teenagers, we all thought that. And that, no, if I lie enough, then, they'll believe it, because if I lie enough, I can believe it, right? And so they don't really have that lived world experience that as adults that we carry with us. So there's a lot of fears, and there's a fear of showing fear. So having to man up and be this tough guy, maybe he started the fights to get other people off of him. I don't know, I wasn't in there, but I don't know what the assault or the altercations were about. But a lot of it is having to do with pride and with making a name or with defending a name. It's not about big stuff. Like things that we would think about would warrant a fight. The little things warrant a fight in prison. You took my sandwich, you owe me a ramen or a noodle. We talk about a 3-noodle hit, somebody's going to get hit or hit, depending on which way you want to look at it, for 3 packets of ramen. That's, 75 cents. Well, it's a whole different world when you look at what you have to navigate when you go in. It's easier to do that when you have some world experience. Again, he didn't have that. His brain is still developing at 19. And to go back, I'm not going to diss his mother in any way, because I could not imagine raising a baby at 14. God bless her, right? But she's still growing. So her parenting had to rely on other people, right? Because she doesn't have the knowledge about how to raise a baby at that age without relying on her village. So he may have not gotten what he needed to be going forward. Again, I don't know Melly, I don't know his mama, but I'm just thinking of a typical 14-year-old and what is their skill set in parenting? Well, their skill set is pretty much Insta and TikTok these days for a 14-year-old. Right. So not having a phone and not being able to communicate with people, all of a sudden you're thrown into a world where you have to talk to people. You can't just ignore. You have to read books. You have to watch whatever the TV is playing, or you have to sleep.
Right.
So he doesn't come in with that full toolbox of skills to help him cope. And unfortunately, you're baptized by fire when you go in. And I feel for him. I do. That's a long time to be incarcerated and living in indecisiveness. He doesn't know. Am I going to get to go home? Am I not going to get to go home?
Correct. Correct.
So,
Now, how do you add, I mean, obviously with your experience dealing with juveniles, how do you add that? I wouldn't say, obviously you said that Melly isn't like, he wouldn't be your, or you haven't dealt with a famous inmate, but
yeah.
I'm sure you've dealt with plenty of notorious inmates in these similar situations. So how is the magnitude of adding something of that aspect? Like obviously him, he has fame. He's well known throughout the world, on top of being a juvenile and going into, or pretty much fighting for your life right now by surrendering yourself, going to trial, dealing with people while you're incarcerated, like you said, having fights and lashing out and whatnot. How do you, with all that and on top of that magnitude, how is it different for that person's mindset?
Well, holy moly. I mean, first off, think about if you won the lottery. Oh God, I got to buy a ticket tonight. The Powerball's at $1 billion, right? Okay, so if you win this, everybody's going to be coming at you. When we're on the outs, we have the ability to go somewhere else and hide. We can shut off our phones. We can stop. We can detach, untether ourselves from our devices. Now, Melly is pretty much walking around there like the Powerball winner. Now, some people may want to be near him and to connect with him because of his fame. So he's got to start to navigate that and try to figure out, are you with me because you like me? Or are you with me because I can get something for you, or I can give you something? And that was probably going on before he got incarcerated. When people start to get successful, they find out who their real friends are, and then they have this whole big flood of other people that they're like, oh, no, how do I stop you? But he doesn't have that ability with other offenders when they're incarcerated because they have to mix together. Now, he also has what's going to happen to my career. I was on this trajectory where, yes, he's world famous. What was it? Just like this last month was the first time that his Spotify playlist or players, I don't even know the term, see, I'm old, but the number of plays on Spotify, it's the first time it ever went down, right?
Yeah, last week. Yeah, it was the first time it went down since the trial started. Yeah. But it only went down a minor percentage, and then it went back up. It's starting to go back up within like 24 hours.
Okay. I just knew that there had been a drop, and this was the first time that it had happened. So, there's something in his mind that's wondering, am I going to have a career to go back to? Albeit that's probably a small concern of his.
Right.
But, you've got to wonder who's with you because of you, who's with you because of your affiliation, and who's with you because of they like you, right? Now, granted, I've never had anybody with this kind of worldwide fame, but I have had people that have had like 48 hours and 2020 Dateline kind of things. Maybe not 2020 or Dateline, but I know 48 Hours did one on one of my offenders. And then there's Forensic Files and things like that. And they hate it. They really hate it when it comes on. Because all of a sudden, they've established themselves as this guy. Correct. Not the guy on TV, but this guy. And then this comes on and they're reminded of their very worst day. And I don't know about you, Boom, but I would really hate it if somebody focused all of their efforts and attention on defining me by my very worst day. Whether I did something or I didn't do it, that's not who I am. And I don't want that to be my identity. And so for the client or the offenders that I had that had that kind of publicity, they usually hid to themselves because, they obviously were homicide cases. So by the time that they were with me, they had been there long enough that they've got a single room. They pretty much stayed in their room for a couple of days afterwards. They didn't want to deal with people, young kids that had just come in, hey dude, I saw you on TV, No, he wants to just do his time, be left alone. And I would assume that to a degree, Melly wants some of that. I just want to do my time. I want this case to just get done. And I want to figure out what I'm going to do, where I'm going to go from here. Because for the longest time, he turns himself in, so he knows he's going in. Then he's got to find an attorney if he didn't go in with one already. So that you've got that decision to make. Then you sit there and you're waiting on, okay, when do we get on the calendar? Okay, I'm pleading not guilty. Then you have all these meetings with your attorney and you're planning, and they're doing all these, I can't even think of the legal words right now, boom. But it's hot here. But so they're doing all of these motions, and there's uncertainty. When is our court date going to start? Is it going to be this date? Is it not going to be this date? And then once you get going to trial, are there going to be continuances? Are there going to be things up, all these processes that I'm sure lawyers probably get confused on, from day to day, let alone a layperson. I'm confused. And yeah, I am a smart blonde, but it's still a lot. There's a lot that you have to try to figure out. So this long extended period of indecisiveness and not knowing what's going to happen. Yeah, we know that there's going to be closing arguments on Thursday. Does that mean that it's going to go to the jury on Thursday? Yeah, they're supposed to pack a bag. They're not going to be happy about being sequestered. I wouldn't be. I mean, now I'm being incarcerated. I'm being in prison. I'm just doing this civic duty thing that I'd get a fine if I didn't do.
Right.
And now you're telling me I have to be away from my family and my loved ones at my home. So now you got 12 angry people. So there's another dynamic.
It goes into the movie 12 Angry Men.
Awesome movie. Awesome movie. I saw the original way back in the day.
1957 version.
I wasn't alive then. I'm not that old, just saying. But I saw that one. I haven't seen, what is it, late 90s?
97.
You're good. But yeah, no, I haven't seen that one yet. But definitely, I think that comes into play here. You've already had one juror say, I don't want to do this. I can't do this.
Now, as a therapist who's had experience with, like, obviously not famous people like Melly or whatnot, but you've dealt with, notorious people who have had their trial shown on TV or discussed on national television or whatnot. So as a therapist, what's the conversation like for somebody who is going through something this dire with the world watching?
Do you feel like hurting yourself or not? Do you feel like hurting somebody else? I think that's valid because your life hangs in this balance. So I don't think that you can be over dramatic when you're facing, is your life going to continue? Is your life as you know it going to continue? I think you can be a little bit over dramatic, but still, you're not going to know what's going to happen to you, to your family, to your friends, all of this. So I think a lot of the conversations for him right now are going to be trying to keep it light. I don't think he's going to be sitting down and saying, let me tell you how I feel. One, it's just not a man thing. I did a lot of work trying to get men to talk to me. So, and especially when we're talking about minority men, they tend not to want to talk about how they feel. And they just want to be cool. They just want to be chill. They just don't want to deal with it. Don't want to think about it. Well, they'll think about it when they're on the phone with their family or with their girl or girls. Not going to judge, but they're not going to open up to a lot of people. So he probably doesn't have a whole lot of outlets. His mom is probably trying to stay really strong for him. And I commend her because the love that that's a really cool relationship, isn't it? Just their dynamic. If we all could be that tight with our kids, I think the world would be a much better place. But anyway, he's got a lot that he's probably stuffing. His mom's trying to stay strong. He's trying to stay strong for her. So who is really getting all the stuff that's really going on? What's on his hamster wheel? I would love to have a couple of hours with him and just say, hey, talk to me. And see, and use some of my other ninja mind tricks that I can to get him to talk to me. But because there's got to be a lot going on. I don't think anybody can be calm, cool, and collected when their life may be in jeopardy.
Correct. So. Now, as far as Jamie King, his mother is concerned, obviously you being a mother on top of being a therapist, on top of having 30 years of experience and dealing with these similar situations, you would be the perfect person to ask exactly what is his mother going through emotionally and mentally throughout this whole trial? Like being that your son, I mean, even before the trial, it was obviously shown in the text messages that him and his mom didn't have the best relationship at the time.
Yeah.
And obviously,
Right.
like you said, it's going back from being a teen, and teens are rebellious, rambunctious, have attitudes, lash out, and just have that. It's love. You could definitely see the love there, but obviously, we know growing up, it's hard to deal with teens at any
Yeah.
mother. So just watching this go on, I want to ask you, with the experience, what is Jamie King? Obviously, we don't know exactly what she's going through because we're not her, but what do you think she is going through mentally and emotionally throughout this trial, watching her son being on trial that she had when she was 14 years old?
I can't even imagine. I can't. Um, well, this is going to be out in the Twitter world, so I can't really say anything. But I may or may not have experience with having a child call me from a jail, but got out the next day. But I was really scared, and I pulled a lot of my weight to make some phone calls to find out what his status was. So I don't know if she's got some way to get influence to get inside information, because that's, as a mom, I need to know everything that I can know. I never turn off trying to protect and keep my child safe. He's 35, or he'll be 35 next month. And I'm going to still always be the default is to want to bubble wrap him, right? So now imagining that my baby is in jail with all sorts of scary people, maybe scary. I mean, not being in jail, they're scary. I think a lot of people would be really afraid for their child. So thinking about that, wanting to talk to him to find out how he's doing every day. How did he handle court today? How's he feeling? How much money does he need on his books? Those kind of things. I'd be really worried about the little things. And it would be hard for me to not want to say, we'll get through this. No matter what happens, we're going to get through this. But now, do you believe that? I think that's going to be a difficult place to be as a mom, because you cannot control, you cannot impact whatever's happening with him inside jail. And you can put all the money on the books that he has. I'm sure some of that from his earnings has been put on his books. But that's not protecting him unless people are being paid. But worrying about your child is one. Two, having to navigate the process on the outside without your child, because you're getting together with your friends knowing that your child can't do any of that, but you're getting together and you're finding relief, going over to your friend's house or to your sister's house or to your own mom's house and having a couple tip them back and just relaxing and unwinding. And you can talk to your friends, you can talk to your family, and that luxury is not afforded to your own child. So that would drain. Not knowing, did you get the right attorney? Did you not get the right attorney? Did you say the right thing in your deposition? Did you not? I mean, is this one thing going to be the one thing that's going to turn the tide the other way for my kid? I mean, all of that has got to be running through her mind. She wants the best for him. And she loves him. Whether he did this or not, I think is irrelevant as a parent. And to other families that I've talked to, they will openly say, I don't approve of the decisions that you make, but I love you. And it seems like she's falling into that camp, that she's not the one that says, oh, you did this, I'm washing my hands of you. She's like, I love you unconditionally. You're my baby. We haven't always been tight, but we are again, because we grew up together. And think about siblings that fight. There's 11 years between myself and my youngest sister. And we grew up together. So I think it's kind of similar to what happened with Melly and his mom. But she's got to really be worried about what's going on with him and how he's going to make it.
Now, as a protector, as a mother, you guys are a natural protector of your child, whatnot. Especially having them at such a young age. So I want to ask you, as somebody who is a mom who has experience and just being a protector herself, how do you contain yourself emotionally and mentally watching your child fight for their life, and you pretty much have nothing, you have no way to help them, you have no way to, you know, protect them, I would say.
Right. And now add on the whole social media mess with all
Correct.
this, right? Because you've got the entire world weighing in on your child when they don't know them.
Mhm.
So they haven't been with him throughout this process. They haven't watched him grow up. They don't have that connectedness. You can't protect. So who do I rely on? I rely on my own village, whether that's my friends, my sisters, my brother, my parents, my pets. I have to find my outlets. But for a lot of family members, they have to get up and go to work and pretend like nothing's happening when their entire world is falling apart throughout this process. Somebody's got to get up and pay the rent. Somebody's got to pay the house note. Somebody's got to pay for the car. Somebody's got to pay for the food. So there has to be some way to have life keep going on, but yet your life is stopped. And I told that to all my clients that were incarcerated, is basically your life has stopped the day that you walked into jail or prison. Everybody else's life has gone on. For example, I brought in pictures of like Walmart on a Saturday, and that there's 14 different kinds of Cheerios. Now, try to explain Netflix to somebody that didn't even have the internet when they came into prison. You mean you can just open this thing and watch any movie you want? They could only watch movies if they went to the theater, and it had to be the movie that was playing that they got to see. And they had one kind of Cheerios, just regular Cheerios. Now you have generic Cheerios and honey nut and frosted and apple cinnamon and all these different choices. So it can be very overwhelming. But I think it goes back to relying on your village. We are pack animals as humans. We need other people. And whatever our position is in the pack, we rely on the rest of our pack to keep us safe. And when one goes down, say Melly goes into prison, how does the rest of the pack that is not in prison continue having him as a pack member? It's hard to comprehend, and it takes so much work, especially with long incarcerations, to keep those relationships up, because it costs a lot of money to talk on the phone. You gotta buy their own stuff, so you have to send money. It's just I've seen a lot of relationships fall apart the longer people are incarcerated, and I think she may be afraid of that. What's going to happen if he does? I mean, are they ever going to have a relationship again? Those are the kind of things that, as a mother, I would be concerned about, and as a psychologist, I also can see where it just would be a mental drain and strain.
Now, as a mother, as a protector, with the inability to be able to do anything while your child is on trial, how does that affect you as a mother? Do you have how does that have an effect on you as a mother? Because at the same time, you have no way to protect your child. Obviously, this is something you've been naturally, it's a natural instinct for you. And just, does it have any type of long lasting effect that, can't be recovered, or can't be, I would say, fixed?
Work through? Yeah. I don't think there's ever anything that we can't work through if both parties want to work through it. I really firmly believe in that. If we have open minds, we can come together. So thinking of something that can't be forgiven or can't be worked through or can't be, put in the past and move on forward together, I have a hard time thinking of something that I couldn't put aside to care for a family member. Now, that being said, if Melly was my son, someone would have to take my phone, my laptop, my computer, everything away. I could not have any electronics, because I'd want to be chasing down every single person that said something negative about my baby. And I would want to be going all over the place and saying, you don't know him. You have no right to be saying that. Get out of my business. The day that you've been in my shoes is the day that I'll listen to you, period. Shut up. I would not have any friends left if I did that. So it takes a whole new super level of self-control to not be commenting all the time, because you know she's on social media. And I'm really, I have to believe that she has an amazing support network, because she's containing it very well. And the few comments that I've seen have not been, F off, right? They've not been rude. They've not been attacking. They've been a mom, right? But I haven't delved a lot into what she's put out there. But I know that she's not as active as I think that the majority of us would be. Whether that's on advice from counsel, or if that's just she's got this strong ability, I don't know, but she's got a superpower there.
Now, how about as a parent, having a son on trial, but also there being victims on the other side who have mothers of their own who are also grieving or going through this trial with you? What is the mental state of, I would ask you, what is the mental state you would suggest, or not suggest, but what is the ideal mental state going on with Jamie King right now, and knowing that there's two other mothers on the other side who are equally hurt, equally angry, equally confused, feel like they, as protectors of their child, they weren't able to do it, or they failed at that task, if you say. Yeah. But what do you think is going on between both, as far as mentally and just emotionally, now that you know that they have victims on this side, and it's parents going at
Well, that's a tough one, because they had been friends for a long time before all this happened. And I think about my own son's lifelong friends. I was also social with the friend's parents, right? Or parent, depending on what kind of household makeup they had. I was a single mom, so I was a kind of pariah where I raised my son. But thinking about that, she not only lost her son, her friends lost their sons too. But there's a difference in the sense that how Juvie and Sax moms probably are looking at it is right, is they will never get their sons back. They would gladly take their sons being behind bars for the rest of their lives versus what they have with them 6 feet under. Now, Melly is still here, but that's not taking away the fact that Jamie's grieving. She's grieving the loss of her son for the last 4 years, and possibly forever. But I would beg to guess that the moms were all at least social or friendly. I mean, because neighborhoods tend to be tight. I know my neighbors. I'm sure you know yours. Growing up, oh yeah, we knew all the parents. Because we relied on, I'm Gen X, so or Gen Z, no, Gen X, yeah. We relied on the other parents to feed us, because our parents sometimes forgot they had kids. And so you knew everybody's mom. You knew who made the best Rice Krispie bars, or who had the best juice, right? So Jamie's mourning the loss of the 2 boys, as well as her son. The 2 moms are mourning the loss of their boys, but also the fact that they have to relive the worst day of their lives over and over and over again while this is being dragged out. So when we lose somebody, we go a couple days, we have a funeral, and I hate the word closure, but I'm going to use it. There's a sense of closure, because it's like, okay, funerals are for the living. So we all got together. We talked about how much we love and miss this person, and now we're going to move on. You never really get over a death. You get through it, because it's not like, Sax mom's going to wake up one day and go, oh, he's dead. Okay, well, let's go on. No, Juvie's mom's not going to do the same. These families lost a member, and you have to figure out how to move on from that. They have the funeral, and they know that their sons are not coming back. Melly's mom does not have that. She doesn't know what's going to happen with her son from day to day.
Right.
And so she's got that uncertainty. I'm sure some days she would like to have she wants an answer to something, because she's been living in suspended chaos, I guess is a good way to put it. Not knowing who she can rely on. She lost her friends who lost their kids. She lost her son. So a lot of questioning, self-doubt, loneliness, wondering, how she's a human. So she must have some empathy towards what they're going through. As mothers, how can you not put yourself in their shoes? it's terrible what's happened to her son, but they lost their sons. They are not coming back. And I don't know what their dynamics are. And I'm not going to pretend that I can imagine myself in their shoes. But I would want to be able to say something to them like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you lost your son. But does now that get misinterpreted that I am taking ownership for their loss? You know, we live in such a litigious society that an expression of empathy or condolences may be misconstrued as, you know, guilt. Like, I'm sorry you lost your son, and I'm saying that because my son did it. When in essence, she's just saying, I'm really sorry you lost your son. And this sucks all the way around.
All right, and then I want to ask you, based on your experience and conversations that you've had with inmates or people during their trials, is there closure at the or after the trial for both sides, for both Jamie King, for both Sack and Juvy's parents or mothers that have lost their sons? Is there closure after this trial, regardless of the outcome, regardless of if Melly is found guilty or innocent?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I've seen it go so many different ways. There are a lot of people that have this, it probably is very rooted in faith, that have this ability to come in and no longer have the anger because they've given it up and given it to their higher power, right? There's others that stay, and I don't want this to come off in a negative way, but kind of stay stuck in the day that the loss occurred. I can't predict how I would handle it on either side, but each person is going to have to find their way through. We've seen it totally destroy families. And then conversely, you've seen people rise up to the surface, like almost like a phoenix. And I've seen family members of incarcerated people who have gone on to like start movements, right? And have really found meaning in making a difference. And then I've also seen people that have just gone down the toilet because they don't know what to do without this other person. So the question being, is there closure? I think if you've got a healthy support network, if you've got a good basis and a grounding, you're going to navigate and find your way. I don't think you're ever going to wake up one day and say, okay, we're good. Because there's always going to be, if I've lost my child, part of my heart is missing. And nothing is ever going to fill that. But is it going to help me to stay stuck in mourning? Or is it going to help me to stay stuck in anger? Because if I had lost my son and somebody else had been convicted of his murder, I'm going to be angry until I'm not. And it's not going to do me any good. We all know the research about anger. Anger really can destroy you from the inside out. It is the most toxic, but also the most productive emotion that we can have, because we don't stay in anger long. We do something to not be angry anymore. So to do that and move forward, you got to find that. And I hope for all three of the moms and all three of the families that they do, regardless of the outcome, because this doesn't have to define anybody. We are more than that. They are all more than that one night. And now, the whole world knows about it, but they're more than that.
Now, based on your experience, I want to ask you, what kind of lasting effect will this trial have, regardless of the outcome, will this trial have on the families? Because obviously Jamie King is not, or Melly is not only Jamie King's son, she also has a younger son, and he has a sister as well. And Sack and Juvy, both, they have younger siblings as well, and you know, mothers, grandparents, everything. So I want to ask you, just based on regardless of the outcome, what is the long-lasting effect that this will have on the families pretty much involved, just in general?
Well, I'm a trauma therapist, actually. I work 100% in what we call capital T trauma. So that is being exposed on the regular to traumatic incidents, experiences. And that's, if I just were a therapist off the street looking at all those families, I would say there's got to be trauma there. Yes, being incarcerated is a trauma. Losing your child is a trauma. Now, this wasn't somebody that just died of cancer that you knew was going to happen. You thought your child was safe with their friends, and they weren't. So getting past that would take a lot of work, whether that's with your friends, whether that's with a therapist, whether that's with your pastor or your church people. It's going to be, you're going to need to have somebody to help you through this. And I do think that they have nightmares. I do think that they have flashbacks. I do think that they avoid talking about it, or they can't not talk about it. I do think that they have visceral reactions when reminded of it, or when they're in the courtroom seeing the crime scene photos. I can't imagine seeing that where my son was murdered. So there's a lot of pieces that they need to pick up. Now, not everybody believes in therapy, and I'm not going to tell everybody that they should, but I will. Everybody should go to therapy. Never trust a therapist who isn't in therapy, by the way. So I think that getting some help, getting some support, and finding, to sound cliche, their new normal is going to be their best way out. But they're never going to be the person that they were the beginning of October as they were from now on.
Okay. And then as far as trauma, obviously this is a case that includes not only friends, but best friends at the time, or best friends in general, like almost brothers. Like, I think people miss the fact that a lot of this that happened is something that happened between not only best friends, but like people that are so close that you was like, blood doesn't make us any different. We're brothers, we're twins and whatnot. That's what Melly referred to them as a lot of times. Even has them tattooed on his face. He has their names tattooed on his face. So I want to ask you, as far as trauma, what is the lasting effect that this will have on Melly, even regardless of the outcome, regardless of guilty, not guilty? What is this a lasting effect that will have on him? Obviously, sitting down for 3 years already, but you can't get your friends back, your best friends back. So what is the lasting effect that this will have on him as far as trauma goes?
Well, I mean, for himself individually, I think there's going to be a lot. Whether he chooses to numb it with substances, which most people do, it's regardless of whether he did it or not. He lost his friends, like you said, and these were not just friends. They were blood. They were brothers. When you have that connectivity with somebody else, you can't imagine. It's like losing an appendage. So now you're walking around without an arm and a leg. So I don't know if he's going to be real quick to want to make new friendships, having known, even if he did do it. If you do that to your friends, what's somebody may be capable of doing to you then? So now, are you just reluctant to really get close to somebody again? Are you going to close yourself off? That's a whole nother ballgame when you start looking at isolation and not being the pack animals that we are. So say he relies only on his family. Well, what happens when the siblings are like, no, we don't really want anything to do with you anymore, dude? Or they're like, no, you can't go anywhere because it's not safe, so we have to come with you everywhere. There's two extremes here. And he'll fall probably in between one or the other. But I think he's going to end up being reluctant to really get close to somebody again. And that's sad, because think about being in your early 20s and you're alone. Or the people that are alongside you are peripheral. They're not close relationships. You've lost those. Whether you had a hand in it or not, you've lost those friends. You've lost those brothers. And nobody's going to replace those. How you choose to honor them is going to be up to the individual. But I would suggest, if he were my client, that he find a way to keep them alive with him. And that, I mean, I've got tats all over the place, but I'm just not a face tat person. But but that was how he chose to honor them. And I commend him for that, because he's choosing to grieve in his way. And
so he got the Sakchaser and Juvy before they passed away.
oh, before. Okay, my bad. I thought they were after.
Yeah, way before.
Okay. So. Well, then I don't know if he really likes having those tattoos there, but you know, he did have time to get them removed. But so they are kind of an honorarium to them. I didn't know he had them before. Thanks, Boom.
Right. So, no problem.
There's things that I haven't found out through my rabbit hole dig. Oh, but I think going back, he's probably going to be real cautious about who he lets into his inner circle, which is sad, because he's a young man that's going places. And if he did it, then he needs to pay the price for that. And if he didn't do it, then he needs to be able to be allowed to make his choices from here on out. Now, if he did it and he gets off, that's living constantly with a guilty conscience. And that is a hard thing to live with. Have you ever told somebody just a little white lie? Yeah. And you don't ever want to talk to them again, because yeah, oh, I got to remember that story. Shit, what did I say? Right? Now imagine, because the rap community is a tight community, and it's a small community. It may seem, but they talk. And Florida's not that big. So if he did it and he gets off, is he got to watch his back for the rest of his life? I mean, that's a miserable existence. So yeah, I would hope that he finds somebody that he can talk with. And we lose our jobs and our license if we say anything. So a therapist is a good out. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't tell anybody shit. I can't. So.
Okay. And then one thing that I've noticed about Melly during the trial is he'll always, when the jury steps in, steps out, or even when they return to the jury, to the juror, he makes sure he looks at each one of them in their eye every time. So I want to ask you, as far as somebody that has talked to plenty of people incarcerated who have been awaiting trial or have to go through trial while being incarcerated, I want to ask you, what is, based on your experience, what is the mental state of someone as far as watching 12 people that they've never seen in their lives,
right,
determine their fate?
Oh my God. I'm sure he is trying to get any iota of something he can grasp onto for which way they're leaning. And I would be just staring at them the entire time. I would have a hard time listening to what's going on, because I'm like, oh, look at, there was a microburst there. Oh, okay. Oh, does that mean they like me or they don't like me? You know, and I can love somebody and just be really a big fan, but if you messed up and killed 2 people, I'm going to send you to prison. So he may be looking on whether or not they like him or not, but it's not, likability has nothing to do with it. And whether or not they understand where he comes from and what has gone on in his life to lead him to where he is now, they're not going to, they've not been in his shoes. I've not been in his shoes. So, I mean, I feel kind of weird trying to be in the shoes, but I would be grasping for straws, trying to find, if somebody made eye contact with me, I would take that as a good sign. If they diverted their eyes and were like, you know, I would take that as a bad sign. And that's just, you know, body language, layperson 101. And so every day he's probably replaying things over and over in his head. Did it go that well? Did they seem, oh, that guy was taking notes. Why was he taking notes at that time? You know, or that lady seemed to be falling asleep. Doesn't she realize this is my life? You know, wake up, lady. So there's a lot of different factors at play again, and I'd be trying to analyze every single one of them. But again, I'm a therapist, so I'm, you know, trying to analyze a lot of things. So.
And then speaking of analyzing and eye contact, while I was in the gallery, I would see Melly's whole, or not Melly, but the victims gallery at that, I would see the whole family just stare at Melly like repeatedly, just
Oh yeah.
directly stare at him and just to get him to stare back at them. So I want to ask you, based on your experience, can you describe the emotions and mental state of not only someone who's grieving that they lost their child as well, but like they stare at that person that they feel
Is responsible.
took away their child, are responsible for taking away their child. Explain that whole mental state going in. You're going into a courtroom, you're sitting across the person you feel is responsible. I've seen a couple times that even family members in that gallery were like, yo, I can't sit here too long because if I see something I don't like, I'm gonna snap, I'm gonna go off in here. And I can't really restrain myself. I've seen Sakchaser's mom see an autopsy photo of him and be inconsolable and have to walk out. I've seen Juvy's mom, even though she took the stand to point him out, but watching his autopsy photo, she couldn't hold herself and couldn't hold herself back and just inconsolable at the moment at that time. People getting angry, and like I said, they'll come in and look directly at Melly for the whole trial to get his attention. So I want to ask you, what is through your experience, what is the mental state of the victims?
Well, a couple things. One, we don't handle uncertainty or, outside of our control things very well as people, as humans. We want to be in control of a lot of different things. And losing your child was outside of your control. We kind of touched on it a little bit. As a protector, I failed at that because my son was killed, right? So there may be some guilt, but if somebody wronged my kid, my first gut instinct would be to go mess them up, right? And I almost said a bad word, but that's human nature, to want to right a wrong immediately. An eye for an eye is instinctual. I mean, that's what cavemen used to do, but we have to take a step back and say, okay, it doesn't help bring my son back if I'm in jail too, right? So having somebody around that's going to bring you back down to level-headedness, is fine. It's very good, because I think we all would like to retaliate, right? And vengeance, revenge. We all want things to somehow be equal or to be fair, but they're never going to be fair. So all we're left with is mean mugging, And you said they're all just staring at him. And that's what they can do. They want him to feel crappy because they took a family member from them. They took their most prized possession. I don't want to say possession, but when I had my son, I learned that my heart could live outside of my body, right? And if somebody were to quash that and that heart outside of my body no longer beat anymore, I don't know how I would handle that. So to be sitting in that room, they're stuck because they have to be stuck because everything is replaying over and over again. They may have gotten through some of their anger. They may have gotten through some of their grief, but they can't really have that final closure piece until they know the outcome of this trial. And they know that it's not in anybody's best interest to do anything more than mean mug him. And that's what's in their control. And if they feel good doing it, more power to them, right? I'm not going to tell anybody that that's wrong, because at the very least, that's what I would, as a mother, would be doing. And I've got a whole crap ton of people in my support network, and I would still be sitting there glaring and drilling eye holes through the back of his head, because whether he did it or not, he's the one sitting in front of 12 people charged with it. So you either have to trust in the system or you don't. And our system is broken. I will be the first one to admit it. But it's the only system we have. So we do have to have some faith in it.
Now, what about from Melly's aspect, from Melly's point of view, as somebody who's talked to plenty of inmates, what is it like sitting there watching the people that feel you are responsible, watching you fight for your life and just staring at you, feeling like you're guilty until proven innocent, obviously, in their eyes. So
Right.
how does it feel knowing, or what's going on, what's going through his head, or what is he going through emotionally and mentally, just having them sit there in that gallery and stare a hole through his head?
Well, I know from one of my offenders that I worked with what it was like for him to get letters and cards and things from the family members of the person that he killed. We ended up having to block contact because it was my client was deteriorating. He was very open about what he did and how he messed up and that he felt bad. He was making some serious changes. He was doing well. I mean, had some substance use issues, and it all happened when he was under the influence. Some of it he didn't even remember. But to have birthday cards sent on the birthday of the victims, to have Christmas cards sent signed by the victim when it wasn't the victim, and to have cards sent to you on your birthday saying, I hope this is the last birthday that you'll ever have. How is that person supposed to move forward and rehabilitate or to try to make something of their life? Is it fair that they get to make something of their life and the person that died doesn't? No, it's not fair. But we ended up going to court to get, a cease and desist because my client was going to end up suiciding because all they saw for the rest of their life was contact on these dates, reminded consistently that this is what you did. He's already reminded of it daily because he's in prison. He's already reminded of it once he gets out because he's going to be on parole forever if he gets out. Because, yeah. So as far as Melly, I would pay anything to be a fly on that wall, to be able to watch his body language and how he interacts or doesn't interact. Did he make eye contact with Sack or Juvy's family?
Yeah. I mean, they made it to the point where they were like, even Juvy's mom got up one time and like stood in the middle of the courtroom and just looked at him like, you're gonna see me. Like, you're gonna see my reaction. You're gonna see me stare a hole in your head. You're gonna see that I'm here every day, like as a reminder, like I'm not giving up, or I feel like you're guilty, or you're responsible, or whatever's going through her head. Even Sakchaser's mom at the same time. Like, but having a whole gallery of people that you grew up with, that you befriended, family. Even he has a tattoo, or Melly has a tattoo of Sakchaser's mom.
Mom's name, right?
Yeah. Like, just all of that boiled into, now it's pure hatred in that when they stare at him now, I'm sure is what he has no way to ignore it.
No, he can't. Because the whole world is going to know if he doesn't make eye contact back, right? Or if he dismisses because, oh, we know Melly's guilty because he won't look at Juvy's mom, right? So whether or not he makes eye contact back, he's damned if he does, he's damned if he doesn't, right? So the only way to really know what he's feeling is to know whether or not he was involved, right? If he was, and he's able to look at them straight on, that's a big red flag for me, because that's like antisocial personality, where do you have a conscience? You took away their baby and you're just able to look at them like they're nobody on the street. You have to know how they're grieving. So, I've worked with a lot of people with antisocial personality disorder. They really don't care. I hope that's not him, just because he's human. But if it is, then there's really not much to analyze, because there's not much going on. There's no emotion. There's just how is it going to impact me? What can I do to survive? And it doesn't matter who I step on or, what I do, as long as I come out on top. And a lot of people get that mixed up with narcissism, but that's a whole therapy thing.
Right.
Now, if he avoids contact, that does show some responsibility, or not always responsibility. I want to really impress that. It shows some acknowledgement of their pain if he avoids looking at them. Because whether or not he was involved, he's the one who is sitting up there. So you said it best, they've already said you're guilty until proven innocent. And by the way, you're never going to be innocent. You're just going to be not guilty, right?
Correct.
And they're
Correct.
going to wonder who they paid off to be not guilty. They're
Oh,
not ever going to believe anything other than he did it.
correct. Correct. And then let's go into trust. I want to ask you, Melly has the whole world watching this and already predetermining like his fate, the outcome of the trial, whether he did it or didn't do it. While it was nobody in the world there but these four people, correct? Or three people, or if Melly was even there at all. Allegedly, he wasn't there. He had an alibi that showed that, or that took the stand that said he got in the car with them. So it's saying that, he cried when Sack and Juvie died. He did all this. He couldn't find his phone, like they said, like he said. But I want to ask you, after all of this, how does this affect Melly's trust, just from a mental standpoint?
How do you trust anybody? How does anybody trust him? I think that's going to be a long road for him. I mean, he might be able to start trying to test people to see if he can put some faith in them. But conversely, how many people are going to want to jump in and put their all into him? If he was involved, it says an awful lot that he chose allegedly money over two lifelong brother friends. So I don't think I'd be racing to kind of step into one of those roles, because if that's what you did to them, what are you going to do to me? I'm just meeting you now. So I think it might be a lot more lonely than he's anticipating. And
Now,
for others, trust. Oh, go ahead.
based on your experience with others that you've dealt with through therapy, how they handle trust after their journey?
They don't trust. They don't trust. You lose a lot of naivete, I guess maybe that's a bad word, but you really get cynical after working or living in a prison for an extended amount of time. You start to look at the world through a whole different lens. And people are always out to get you, and who's going to fuck you over here, or who's going to screw you over here, who's going to be, on your side over here. If you encounter trouble over here, can you count on this person to come up and help have your back? You don't have that same kind of blanket trust. It's doled out very carefully, your circle of, I don't even want to use the word trust, because I've run into a lot of people that I worked with while they were incarcerated once they've gotten out. Minneapolis ain't as big as people think it is, right? So I've run into them and we chat a little bit, but they don't have the same gregariousness that they did when they were incarcerated earlier on. You lose a lot of that, because I referenced it before, but we're pack animals. We need other people. So you find the people that you can trust and that will trust you. But I think it's going to be a long road for him, both in giving trust and also receiving.
Okay. And then as far as trust, even further going with trust, Melly, even though the world is watching his trial in amusement at that and having their own predetermined outcome, but also the world has started to bet on his outcome. Like,
Right.
so how does somebody, I mean, I'm pretty sure you haven't dealt with a situation similar to this before, but just ideally, how does somebody face the world, or how does somebody like deal with the world? Because even regardless of if he's innocent or found guilty, he still has to go back go to his cell, go to jail, and still interact with people who know, like, hey man, the world is betting on you right now, or you lost a bet, or you won, like this, that, and the third. Like, but how would someone ideally deal with the world after that? Like, the world just literally bet on my life,
Right.
and I gotta, after it's all said and done, I still have to interact with the world. And like I said, like we just talked about with trust, like that even goes even deeper with trust. Like, how do I know who was bidding on my life? How do I know who wasn't bidding on my life? How do I know people that were disgusted, other than like my intermediate family, of course? But like, to imagine even him being a celebrity somewhat, the people that are putting on the bet is a outlet that a lot of up and coming artists like beg to be on, and you turn around and they're literally gambling with your life. So
right, I think for a lot of people who want to go into the entertainment industry, they'll do anything to get their name out there, right? Well, Melly's name is already out there, and I think it is ludicrous that people are betting on this trial. His life is not for sport. When we started televising trials, they became entertainment for us. They became, let's see how I'm not living, right? I'm going to watch what happens to somebody else's life, not mine. I'm going to just sit back and remind myself that this isn't my life, so I'm good. And it makes us feel better about ourselves to see somebody else in a precarious position. Americans have this weird obsession with true crime, and that's a whole nother thing too. But somehow it became entertainment for us. And that's not what he wants for his life. He wants to be on people's tongues because he's a good artist, right? And because he has earned his way there, not because of some trial, whether he's guilty or innocent. If I were Melly, I'd be like, when I got out, or if I didn't get out, I'd be having my mom do it, or one of my friends. I'd be going through every single comment, trying to find who I recognized and who I didn't, right? So who can I trust? This guy has been my buddy for years, and he's now put $100 down that I'm going to go to be executed? What the hell, right? You're supposed to be my friend, and you're laying money on the fact that they're going to kill me. And so how do you handle being, I want to say, the butt of a joke almost? Because it feels like that people are not taking this as seriously as they should be, right? This is a death penalty trial. That doesn't mean he's going to get the death penalty, but his life is literally on the line. And to be able to say, I am not going to make a decision on his guilt or innocence until 12 other people do it first, is a near heroic undertaking, because we all make up our minds at one point or another. But we have this thing called the Constitution that says he is innocent until 12 people come back and say something different. Then he's just not guilty. That doesn't mean innocent. It just means not guilty. And I think the families may end up hanging on a lot of that. No, he wasn't found innocent. I think his supporters are all going to say he's innocent. He was found innocent. No, he's not going to be found innocent. That's when they drop the charges. That's when you're innocent.
Right.
Or that could, I guess, be on a loophole too. The only way to stay innocent is to not do stuff. And there's a lot of people who never committed the crimes that are incarcerated. But for him to know that people are betting on this has to be wearing on him too. It goes back to the trust. Who can he trust? I mean, think about it. At his level of infamy, we'll call it infamy because he was famous when it was a good thing. When it's a bad thing, it's infamy. But I mean, are they taking his towels and going to put them on eBay? What about his shower shoes? I mean, is somebody taking like his underwear? You can't even trust that somebody's not going to try to hawk your stuff. Yeah, this was Melly's jail underwear, $300,000. You know, nobody's going to bid that. Well, maybe, I don't know, but you know, somebody's going to try to make money off them every which way they can. You have to be suspicious about each person. And now knowing that it's reached the level of, you know, Las Vegas is taking bets. Okay, there is a little bit of pride in that, I would think. Like, I've really made, like, everybody knows who I am. There's got to be a little bit of pride there. But there's also, like, what the fuck? What is going on here? And for somebody to have a little bit of humility and say, this has gone too far. And now I can't trust anybody. I would hope that his supporters are really his supporters and are not betting on this.
Now,
Because I can't see you calling yourself a Melly supporter and laying bets.
correct. And then somebody with your experience has dealt with both sides of the type of person that is on this trial. You've dealt with somebody who is guilty of these crimes, have committed these heinous crimes, or committed heinous crimes, and you've had to talk to them. Like you said, he was trying to get his life together afterwards and whatnot. But also, have you dealt with some who are just unapologetic about their actions and just true monsters and whatnot? But I want to ask you, what is going on? What is the mental state of someone who is innocent fighting for their life and going through all the proceedings to someone, or compared to someone who knows they did it and still just going through the trial or whatnot, still trying to prove their innocence at some point, and or just that mental state of people who, yes, they committed the crime, they know they did it, they're just going through the trial to show like you can't prove, or it's innocent until proven guilty. And then compared to someone who is innocent and fighting for their life through this trial, and with the uncertainty of even though I didn't do it, I'm still being charged with these crimes, or I'm still being convicted of these crimes based on these 12 people that made the decision for me. So
right. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people are really good actors, and you can't tell the difference between who is genuinely fighting for their life because they didn't do it, and the person who is, I'm going to make you believe that I didn't do it because I know how to do this. I know how to be charismatic. I know how to cry on cue. I know how to do this. I know how to put on the sad face. It's really, really hard to tell. That's when the profilers come in and start looking for those little microbursts, those little inconsistencies, the saying yes while you're shaking no. That's a really easy one, but something as simple as that. And so as far as the difference between the two, they're both trying to get off, right? One is really knowing that they didn't do it, and the other is really playing that they didn't do it. They know that it doesn't really matter if they get caught or not. They did it, and it's only going to heighten their narcissism if they get off. There are innocent people all over in jail and in prison, and that's a sad state of affairs. I mean, when you look at the execution rate of our country, how many people we've executed that were not guilty. We're starting to be a little bit better because of DNA, but still, you've got touch DNA that can be whatever. So psychologically, it's going to take more of a toll on the innocent person than it is on the guilty person, because they are facing the charges as well as compound that with, I didn't do this, and why am I here? So you've lost faith in the system 1000% when you're in there as an innocent person. So you can't trust anybody. You can't trust the COs, you can't trust your lawyer, you can't trust the cops, you can't trust anybody, because you might have said one thing and that landed you where you are. So I'm just not going to talk to anybody. And I can't think of a more heinous experience than to be on trial facing the death penalty when I had nothing to do with something. That would be, I guess, the epitome of misery. I'd find it hard to be laughing or smiling. It may be a nervous reaction, but I think I'd find it real hard to have that kind of response.
Correct. And then going back into trust. Obviously, Melly's not the one, doing the cross execs, doing the examinations or whatnot. So, what is the mental state of someone on trial, trusting their lives with obviously experienced professionals in these attorneys?
Well, I've had to testify for clients before, so they are putting their faith in me that I'm going to be on their side. Now, that's not anywhere close to having faith in your lawyer that's going to do the right thing in the right way to make 12 people believe the right thing. That's a whole different level of trust that I don't think we can really comprehend unless we've been there. You know, where you are turning your life over to a stranger. So you're going to tell them everything in the hopes that one thing will be that one thing to get you to go home. And I'm sorry, I'm missing a client, but putting that degree of trust into somebody takes a lot of faith. You don't really have a choice. You've got to have, somebody's got to defend you. And if you don't like the first person that they assign you or that you hire, it doesn't look good if you fire them and go for somebody else, because you may not, the grass may not be greener on the other side. So is that a lack of trust, or is that a lack of competency? It's gonna be up to the individuals involved. But I think Howard, he rocks. I mean, if I were to get caught up in something, Howard's good. I get him a call. Yeah. But, yeah.
Okay. And then lastly, I want to ask you, as far as a professional, what is some professional advice or just professional anything that you would give to Melly, regardless of his outcome, regardless of if he's found guilty, if he's found innocent, like, what is some professional advice that you would give to Melly as far as any part of this trial or anything going on, regardless of if it's guilty or not guilty?
First off, I don't know how much he's going to listen to me, but I could be his great grandma. But I would encourage him to find what meaning he can. What purpose? What is his purpose? Is his purpose to continue in the path that he was on, or is his purpose somewhere else? I would encourage him to do some deep soul diving. I really would, to find out what really is meaningful to him and to his loved ones. How can he make his mark on the world and be able to just feel good about what he does? He's got talent. I'm not going to argue that. He's got some talent. Is that going to be where he goes? It probably is going to be the most lucrative direction for him. You know, I'm not thinking that, you know, going to college is going to be his best bet, but who's to say? You know, maybe opening up his own business, his own studio, or continuing to make music. But to find something where he can feel grounded and he can live authentically. That's what I encourage all my clients. Find your purpose, and not your special purpose like in The Jerk, but, you know, your purpose. What can you at the end of the day say, it was a good day today. I did some good stuff. I feel good about who I am right now. And that's a lifelong journey for the majority of us, is to find where we fit. And if he can do what he loves and get paid for it, then that's winning. But does he feel good about what he's putting out there? That's the winning thing.
Great. Well, Shelley, I appreciate you taking the time out. Appreciate you blessing us with your 30 years of wisdom and expertise and experience with everything that you have been through and you've done as far as in your career, as far as being a great therapist, psychologist, understanding the trauma, everything going on with what you got. And like I said, for people that they can go to the Shaffer
Professional Services.
Yeah, Shaffer Professional Services to, you know, even to talk to you. I mean, as far as getting therapy or even scheduled therapy appointments, you know, they don't have to be inmates to do this, but also inmates are people that are formerly incarcerated and, you know, still have to go out here and face the world. They can still come talk to you about any issues that they have going on or just to talk. So
exactly.
But I definitely appreciate you taking the time out. You definitely helped a lot with us discussing this case or discussing this trial. It's definitely one of the most high profile trials in a long time and probably will be for a very long time, honestly. But I just thank you for taking the time out. Thank you for speaking with me. Thank you for just even taking the time to speak with me. You know, you're a busy
Thank you, Boom. I'm really glad for the whole Twitterverse that brought us together. You know, I, I want to kind of put a caveat that I'm not the be all to end all, and I am not the smartest person on the planet, and I am not the most experienced nor the best therapist, but I'm damn good at what I do.
Hey, but
And
you got 30 years of experience, so
I do.
you got a lot. You got enough knowledge to know, you know, based on experience alone. That's usually the best way to navigate through this world and understand a lot of people and what they do and the reasons behind why they do it.
Oh, shucks.
But yeah, I'll let you get back to your clients. Obviously, you know,
Right.
get back to everything. I appreciate you following me on all the coverage on the trial. Keep watching. Obviously, we're definitely going to be on Twitter talking more about this trial and all the way up until the end, until the appeal process, everything going on with that, everything that goes on with this. We're going to talk about it on Twitter, obviously, for everybody. So, and then
Oh yeah.
Tell everybody where they can find you at as far as social media.
Oh. Wow. Do I want to put my Twitter out there? I don't have business pages except for my website.
Website.
Yeah, it's Shaffer, Shaffer, professionalservices.com. I think I made a Twitter for my business at one point. Might have.
We're having your personals.
It's at Services Shaffer. I better start updating that then, right?
You should.
Because actually our ethics and our board of ethics says that we can't have contact with clients in a social media capacity. I mean, they can follow our business pages, but they can't really connect with us on a personal level, and which kind of is a good thing. One, I'm a human. I'm not just this walking, talking therapist. I have my own views. I have my own pets I like to put up there. And I can be controversial because I've got opinions. I'm a human. And I think that might color some people that might benefit from therapy. And I don't want everybody to put that face on a therapist. So maybe I better start working on that business page, huh?
Well, in the meantime, they can follow you at Shaffer's Professional Service Shaffer's Professional Service.
Yeah. Yes.
Shaffer's Professional Services.com for sure.
Yes.
And obviously I'll post these on Twitter, post clips on this interview, post the whole interview so people can watch it. People can watch certain parts that apply to them or that they care to know about on Twitter. So we'll definitely have your personal page obviously tagged on there. So you just, you'll get a lot of followers with a lot of questions and maybe even a few more clients. So
well, you know what? It's win-win. As long as I can open the mind of one, it's a good day, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. But like I said, thank you so much for taking the time out to do this.
It's an honor.
Really great. This is really amazing. We got to definitely do this again because I'm gonna definitely have to ask you more. You got 30 years of experience, so you dealt with all kinds of characters. So we know you can deep dive into the mind of these characters. So we definitely.
I got stories.
Exactly, you got stories. You should
and
definitely.
That's just the staff.
Hey, you should definitely get on Threads and and start storytelling like a lot without naming people and start storytelling. That would be dope.
Oh, not clients though, because that confidentiality thing, that's sacred. We don't mess with that. But oh god, yeah, like former coworkers.
It could be
ex-boyfriends.
Hey, you got a life just like we do, so you can definitely do some deep storytelling. So,
well, Boom, it's been an honor. Thank you so much.
Definitely look forward to it. Hey, I'm gonna let you get to it, but thank you, like I said once again, and everybody just keep following on Twitter, and we're just gonna keep going with this. So.
Sounds good. I'm going to retweet the hell out of this, right?
Hey, we all are. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, dear.
Later.
Have a great day.